Hello, folks. Welcome to this tropical season short summary. We are going to be looking at the 1994 East Pacific hurricane season, looking at Amelia, Gilma, John, and Rosa here. This was an above average season with 20 storms, 10 hurricanes, and 5 major hurricanes, making it very easy to remember the numbers. You're just dividing by half every time. So, thanks for the convenience, 1994. With a accumulated cyclone energy, ACE for short, of 185, the typical for the East Central Pacific is roughly 158 to 161, if I'm not mistaken. That's off the top of my head. And this would be an above average season due to there being an El Nino in place. El Nino brings warmer waters to the edges of the East and West Pacific, contributing to increased activity in both of those tropical basins, and actually leads to a decrease in the Atlantic hurricane season generally. This would cause just a few major storms, only 5 of them. In total, however, this season was still responsible for 4 deaths and $720 million in damage. Our first storm we're going to be looking at is Hurricane Amelia. Forming on the 16th of July, Amelia became a tropical storm only 12 hours later. Would become a Category 2 by the 17th, so some pretty rapid intensification, although it doesn't peak until the 19th. It reaches its peak, which is 160 miles per hour, at the time, record low 926 millibar pressure deep. Amelia would weaken as it got closer to Hawaii. At its closest approach, Amelia was a low end Category 3. Amelia makes it past the main Hawaiian island chain, dissipating on the 24th. Despite its relative closeness to the Hawaiian Islands, Amelia was a relatively smaller storm and therefore caused only minimal effects to the islands. Interestingly, Amelia is disputed specifically in terms of strength by the Central Pacific Hurricane Center and the National Hurricane Center. The CPHC says Amelia reached 160 and was Category 5 for 18 hours. The NHC originally said, nah, this thing flat out didn't reach Category 5 at all. Upon the NHC's reanalysis of both Atlantic and East Central Pacific, since the NHC is also in charge of that region, they found, yeah, Amelia did reach Cat 5 strength. 158, 12 hours. Why? Why can't we agree? Anyway, I'm trusting the CPHC on that one. Gilma didn't have any of these issues, though. Gilma formed on the 21st of July and became the 4th consecutive system to cross into the Central Basin. The Central Basin is where, of course, the CPHC has control, where the NHC does not, although they do indeed collaborate, hence the dispute with Amelia. Gilma would peak on the 24th of July, reaching 160 miles per hour, and of course, just after setting a record, why not set another one, 920 millibar pressure deep this time. Gilma, their names are similar in my head, would rapidly weaken upon the end of its Category 5 time span, going rapidly down to Category 3, and then struggling to maintain tropical storm strength before passing well past the main Hawaiian island chain and dissipating on the 2nd of August. Even though Gilma was a little bit larger than Amelia, Gilma was also further away from the Hawaiian Islands than Amelia, so Gilma did not cause any damage. Hurricane John is a very impressive storm. Hurricane John formed on the 11th of August, became tropical storm only 12 hours later, so on the track for rapid intensification, right? Wrong. The problem here is that there is a powerful Pacific high, pretty standard thing in the Pacific. The reason why it's called the Pacific High, especially to its north. This thing nearly obliterated what would become John uh, twice, more than that actually. John almost stopped existing multiple times. This due to the fact that the high pressure was causing intense shear. If there's one thing that hurricanes hate, it's shear. If there's another, it's land. And this one encountered shear. However, John managed to survive, becoming a hurricane on the 19th, and from then on, pretty rapidly evolved. John peaked on the 22nd, reaching 175 miles per hour at 929 millibars. So more wind speed, but a not as intense pressure as Gilma. John would, after this Category 5 stint, which lasted a good 2 days, would fluctuate in strength greatly. We see red, cat 4 dots, orange, cat 3 dots, pale yellow, category 1 dots, back up to category 4, down to cat 3. Oh my goodness. Also, past the Hawaiian Islands, John would enter the JTWC area of control on the 27th, which means that it was officially classified as Typhoon John, which is one of the very rare East Pacific forming storms to do this, to be called a typhoon as well. John would re enter the Central Basin on the 8th of September after meandering for a while, and not like it would stop. John continued to meander, being seen as a hurricane until nearly its death on the 13th of September. So, more than a month here longevity, which is crazy. John is ultimately responsible, however, for $15 million in damage to smaller islands. Hurricane Rosa is our last storm here. Becoming a depression on the 8th of October, Rosa was initially hindered by shear, presumably the same Pacific high that so hindered John. Again, hurricanes absolutely hate shear. You may hear that with smaller storms, shear may actually benefit them, and that's true, but to an extent. Hurricanes, however, are much bigger. They're made of all of these individual storm complexes, and for those to all be together, shear can't get in the way. Anyway, Rosa would regenerate, so to say, on the 10th of October, becoming a hurricane on the 12th. Rosa would peak and landfall on the 14th. It reached 105 miles per hour at 974 millibars pressure deep, relatively low for a Category 2, and made landfall near La Concepcion, I hope I'm saying that right, Mexico. Rosa would be destroyed over the mountainous and arid mountains that is central Mexico, as it does, but this would not stop its remnants from causing record rains and 100-year floods in Texas that broke oil pipelines and caused almost nearly a natural disaster there. Rosa, upon its landfall in Mexico, would cause generally anywhere from 3 to 7 inches. Localizations of rain reached anywhere from 9 to even a maximum of 14 inches of rain. Due to its landfall, Rosa is responsible for 9 deaths, thousands homeless, and $700 million in damage. This season does have its odd quirks to it, which is why it's also significant. Technically, we had the second ever Category 5 in the East Pacific Basin. Now, I say technically because the Saffir-Simpson wind scale, the one used by the US to categorize hurricanes, or by the JTWC to classify cyclones and typhoons, since they're all the same thing, was introduced in 1971. Retroactively, Hurricane Patsy of 59 was seen to be a Category 5, so Amelia is actually the third ever Category 5 in the basin. This is also just a little bit of an odd quirk with the East Pacific, in that the Atlantic, the third most active basin, actually seems to create more Category 5s than the second most active basin, that is the East and Central Pacific Basin. That is just just a really odd quirk of that basin. I could not tell you why though. Like most of the most intense storms of the East Pacific are pretty high end category 4s, but still only category 4s. Anyways, John was the longest lived and longest traveled storm ever at the time until Cyclone Freddy of 2023. John was around for 4 weeks and 2 days and traveled 8,200 miles. That is 13,200 kilometers. That is absolutely insane. Another odd quirk of this season is that usually with an El Nino season, of course, with it being above average, you usually tend to see more landfalls. However, Rosa was the only landfall of this entire season, which is a good thing. It's still unfortunate that it happened, but better one than five or seven, which would definitely be odd for a Central Pacific, East Pacific Basin season. Additionally, this is the 10th costliest East Pacific season ever documented. Records of the East Central Basin do not go back as far as the Atlantic or the West Pacific or almost any other basin, aside from maybe the Southwest Indian. And that's because most of them go out to sea. Yippee! Yay! There's not that much land out there except for Hawaii. And of course some other smaller islands. Thank goodness. At the time, this season was closer to the second or third, but that has been beaten by numerous other storms. Storm seasons, rather. Lastly, this season is tied with the 2002 and 2018 seasons in the number of Category 5 storms that it produced, with 3. This might seem a little bit weaker compared to, say, exceptional Cat 5 seasons in the Atlantic, like 2004 or 2005, but this is still a lot of Category 5s. Uh, Cat 5s are rare, and for good reason. Those are those are the worst. Those are the most highly ranked on the Saffir-Simpson scale. With that said, folks, that is all that I have for this 1994 East Central Pacific Basin season. I thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.